This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And earlier this year, we published an episode about our reading resolutions, specifically our Star Wars reading resolutions for the year of 2023. It's a little over halfway through the year, and I thought, why not meet up again and talk about how our progress on those Star Wars reading goals is going. We're between seasons. I felt like podcasting, and I have a guest close by who's always willing to join me for a chat about books. So Davor from A Large Review of the Force is here again for the fourth time. I hope you enjoy our conversation. I did. So how does it feel to be, for the first time ever, a podcast producer?
It feels pretty nice.
We've done some stuff, but we haven't really utilized your producer role yet, but It's still exciting. You officially are coming on as the producer, in season 2. Season 2, technically, still has not started yet, but, we're getting there. We're getting close. We're going to have to get close because suddenly I have a lot of episodes that I would like to record and get out to all of you because it's important to me and I know to you if you're listening. So
yeah, there's some good things cooking. A lot of things in progress. A lot of ideas getting bounced around.
We've done a lot of planning. There's been some talk. One-sided mostly of moving the show to every other week instead of weekly. I am being encouraged. I don't like it. There's a lot I want to do, and every other week seems like it's coming from a good place.
Correct.
My producer is recommending for the sake of my well-being, but I don't think. We'll see. Obviously, they'll keep you updated on what that's going to be like. This is your 4th time on the show.
Oh man, that's true.
We did a Q&A last year.
Yes.
Then we did the episode it's a continuation of that episode basically, which is the reading resolutions. Right after that, you were on for the Lost Stars discussion. And now here we are again. It's a little bit over halfway through the year, but we're still going to do a mid-year check-in in terms of our reading resolutions. If you haven't listened to that episode, I just looked it up. It's episode 16, where we talk about our Star Wars reading goals for the year. Sometimes it's important to challenge yourself and kind of go outside of what you normally read and maybe go beyond just reading new releases or, try canon if you haven't tried Legends, things like that. It's important to try new things, which we both sort of set out to do this year. So I figured we could start with both saying what our resolutions were. I go and then you go, and then we go into talking about each one individually, how we're doing, what we thought about it, why we haven't gotten to certain things. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I'm game. Let's do it.
Cool. So mine, my resolutions were I wanted to listen to the Ahsoka book. I wanted to reread Heir to the Jedi for reasons. For an episode or series of episodes I have planned. Okay. Here's a correction on a mistake I made on the last episode when we recorded about this. I wanted to read the Fate of the Jedi series. I said Legacy of the Force. That's a whole other series. Not the same series at all. Different characters. Well, there are shared characters, but it's not the same series. So it's Fate of the Jedi. That's the series that are 9 books set many years after Return of the Jedi. That's the series I meant. I said the wrong one, and I didn't catch it. I don't know if I even caught it in the edit. But it's Fate of the Jedi. That's the one I meant. And the other one was I wanted to read more comics because I'm very behind on doing that. And so those are the things I set out to do this year. And we're about halfway through, and we're going to talk about how that went. Or how it's going, I guess.
All right. So I'm enunciating mine also now. So I had also 4 resolutions that I can remember. I really think it was just 4. I don't think I had more than that.
I think so, yeah.
So the 4 resolutions that I had was I wanted to catch up on the High Republic. Chiefly at the time I was referring to Phase 2, because at the time that we recorded, I'd done Phase 1. But we were some part ways through Phase 2. And I was behind on a couple books. And so I wanted to, catch up to and try to keep up with Phase 2. So that was one of the resolutions. I also had a read more comics, get more into the comics resolution. I had a resolution of wanting to read more Legends, which is a continuation of, something that had been started last year when I was getting to some of the Essential Legends collection books. I wanted to keep going with that. So, deepen my proficiency with the Legends universe. And then the 4th one was to revisit the Aftermath trilogy, which I have dunked on every single episode that I've been on this show.
Here we are again.
And
it won't be the last time.
So, yeah, those were my 4 resolutions for 2023.
All right. So how we kind of did it on the last episode is you kind of switched back and forth. So you talked about one of yours, I talked about one of mine. Some of ours are kind of related, so we can kind of like bounce off of each other there. But I'll start with like my first one, which is I wanted to listen to the Ahsoka audiobook because I knew it was very good, having not listened to it, but I'd been told. Every time I mentioned, I never listened to the Ahsoka book. I got some judgment on that because how dare I never have. It was in our Audible already. It's a relatively short listen because it's a short book, because it's YA, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought I would listen to that, and I did. And I will tell you, because I'd read this book several times before, so like, you know the story, you know how it ends, things like that. I listened to audiobooks very fast, so it did not take me very long to get through this one. An afternoon or less of cleaning on like a Sunday afternoon, I listened to this audiobook while I was doing that, and fantastic, as I knew it would be. I put it off just because like it feels like this is hilarious, because like a lot of my resolutions actually involve rereading, and the reason I held off on this one for so long is because I feel like I don't have time to reread books. There's a lot of Star Wars books, so like if I've already read one, why put the time into rereading it when I could read one I haven't read yet? But I did, and I have no regrets. I'll talk about it more probably at some point somewhere. I don't know. There's a lot of episodes in my head that we haven't done yet. But yeah, Ashley did a fantastic job, as I knew that she would, and everyone's right. And I'm sorry that it took me so long, but I did it. Yay me.
Good job. Thank you for finally doing it.
I'm sorry. I know that it was just weighing so heavily on you all the time. That weight has been lifted from your shoulders. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it is a really good audiobook. I mean, there's of course just the factor of, the Ashley Eckstein of it all, getting, the voice of Ahsoka, animated Ahsoka. I guess now we have to make the distinction.
Yeah.
Having her reading the story about Ahsoka, and just also, in terms of the, we've had this conversation, you and I, off mic, where you're talking about Star Wars audiobooks and about the fact of like, you have your sort of regular readers of them, like particularly like your Mark Thompson, who do a lot of the books, and like he and again the sort of recurring people, do a really good job. Like these audiobooks are. I'm sure you're gonna at some point do a whole episode just sort of about the world of Star Wars audiobooks. They do such a good job in terms of making these kind of a production from like the music, the characters, and all of that. But also like it's good when you get these people who kind of do one-offs, who do like particular books, who might have a particular resonance for them. Like there's a little bit of an extra special quality. There's, as we just talked about with the Ahsoka novel of Ashley Eckstein, another I mentioned is the audiobook for Ronin that is done by Joel De La Fuente. Like that's a really good audiobook. So again, that experience of like different voices in something like in a literal sense, different voices, but also different voices from a kind of performative perspective. Right. I think is really great to have. And
fun fact, because I don't know how many people know this. Ashley Eckstein has actually narrated another audiobook by E.K. Johnston. Like she wrote the book, and then Ashley Eckstein narrated the audiobook. The name of that book is escaping me, but number one, it's a good book. And number two, Ashley does a great job with narrating books in general. I can't tell you off the top of my head if she's done many more than that. Also, not the only Star Wars actor who narrates audiobooks. So I should do an episode about that or incorporate that into some discussion at some point because that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, exactly. Who did it? Does Kat Tabor, right? She does some of the Padme books.
She does. And Daisy Ridley has also. Yes. I happened to stumble upon I wanted to read a book and I did not know that she narrated the audiobook, and then the book started and it was like narrated by Daisy Ridley, and I was like, what? She did a great job. Anyway, audiobooks are great. We are going to do an episode all about those at some point because I am a big fan of audiobooks in general. That's how most of my books are consumed these days because life is busy. And like I mentioned, you can clean and listen at the same time, but that's not why we're doing this episode right now. Why don't you talk about your first thing?
Yeah. Okay. So first resolution I mentioned, which was catch up on the High Republic, i.e. High Republic Phase 2. Mm-hmm. I have done that.
Hey.
I have read all of the books. I pretty much got to a point where I was fully caught up in the sense of like Path of Vengeance came out and then I was able to read it like not right when it came out, but like very shortly afterwards. Yeah. Like from a standpoint of like not being, months behind or whatever. Right. So yeah, I have caught up on all the books, made it all the way through Phase 2, loved Phase 2. It was just such a it was a challenge because just the pace of Phase 2 publishing was at such a fever pitch. Like you were having books coming out like almost every month.
Right.
So like that made it a challenge. And then that's really one of the, sighs of relief that I breathed when they did the High Republic panel at Celebration and announced Phase 3 and announced the much more spread out schedule.
Yeah.
Because I think that's going to be really good because like that was one of the things about like Phase 2 is that like Phase 2 was like, it was like such a home run and all of the books are just like on such a high caliber, but each book and by extension, each author had relatively so little time in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Like a book comes out and then it's like 4 weeks later, we're moving on to the next book.
Right.
So it'll be good for both the reader standpoint that people have more time to read these books and they don't feel like they're falling behind and they don't feel like, because there's always that worry about like that it starts to feel like doing homework to like keep up with things.
Exactly.
And then also it'll be good from the perspective of the authors that they get a little bit more time in the limelight.
Right.
And can be, celebrated for their achievement and all that.
Right.
So.
Right. And it'll also be, I feel like, easier to then keep up with the comics because like individually, as we'll talk about, comics, like comic issues do not take very long to get through. But, when there's a lot of other content happening, like when you have to read a whole book and there's another one coming out, it can feel like too much. And so the spacing out of the releases moving forward will really, I think, help a lot of other people feel less overwhelmed and allow maybe more people to keep up and maybe even allow for more revisiting, because like something I wish I could do that I will not have time to do is revisit phase 1 of the High Republic before phase 3 comes out. I can't. There's not enough time now. It's already August. And that's a lot of books and comics. Haven't even read the comics. That's a lot of stuff in August and September to do before October, not to mention Tales of Light and Life, which is the short story anthology set in the High Republic that's coming out at the beginning of September. So, yeah, so there's not but there may be time to do more revisiting. Like if you're a person who wants to revisit all of the High Republic before like the last stories come out in 2025, you might have time to do that. So I think it's a good choice. I think everyone is going to be better off for it. But like you said, especially the authors who might get a little bit more time to be celebrated before everyone immediately just moves on to the next thing.
Yes.
Because, as someone who promotes the books, it's also hard to be like, hey, you did a great job on this book. I want to talk about it forever. But then immediately I have to turn around, because normally how it works is, you're celebrating the release, but you might already actually have the next book that's going to come out next. And you have to immediately start reading that, talking about that, promoting that. So it'll be better for everybody, including the people actually working on the books, because I'm sorry that working on books is a lot. A lot of people are involved, but for every individual person, it's a lot. So hopefully this will be a good thing all around. So I will talk about one of my other goals, which is reading the Fate of the Jedi series, not Legacy of the Force. I have read some of those. I don't actually know off the top of my head how many of those there are, but it's not. Fate of the Jedi is 9 books. I know this because I have all of them. And I'm happy to report that due to the wonderful institution that is the New York Public Library, I have been able to read I've been able to listening to a book still counts as reading, but I've been able to listen to the audiobooks, which also exist for Legends, which is less common. I've been able to listen to the first 3 books in the series. I'd read the first one already, but it had been a while, so I wanted to revisit that one before I started reading more of them. First 3 are done, so I'm like a third of the way through the series. Will I finish it by the end of the year? I don't know. We're just going to have to tune in later to find out. But so far, really liking it. I read some Legends when I was younger, and in my past, just Star Wars reading, but not like all of them. So it's not really a nostalgia thing for me as much as like I just am curious about where these stories go, because it's a very different story than what we got in sequels, which is not a bad thing. It's very different, obviously, than what we have gotten in canon. And it's interesting to me to see what the direction of all those stories were, because we're like decades past Return of the Jedi at the point of these stories. The children of, the Solos and the Skywalkers are like coming of age and all that. And it's really interesting. I like it a lot. I'll have more to say about it, later, but really happy that I'm finally also reading books that have been on my TBR for so long, and I'm getting closer every time I read one of these books to having read all the Star Wars books on my shelf. So that's a thing I would like to be able to say that I have done. So we're getting there. Once I have access to those library books again, we'll be able to finish it pretty fast, because, audiobooks.
Audiobooks are pretty great. That's all my Star Wars media consumption, like book consumption, happens through audiobooks, because otherwise, like, I would not be caught up on High Republic right now, let me tell you, if I had to sit down and read all of them.
Well, and that's the only reason you didn't read Path of Vengeance sooner, is because the audiobook was delayed.
Exactly,
So.
Yes.
You got through that audiobook so fast.
I did. I think it took about 4 days.
That's like, I think that's almost a record for you.
Yeah. All right, so My second resolution, or resolution number 2, was consume more comics. On our original episode, we were talking about, and I've sort of talked about the intimidation factor when it comes to Star Wars comics. That there's so many of them, and it's hard to know where to start, how to dive in, and all that. And so I have started doing a little bit of, diving in, going to the kiddie pool, I guess, if you will, to keep with the metaphor. And so I decided to get into the High Republic comics for a couple of reasons. One is I was just getting off of having done Phase 2, and so I was already in the mindset and the time period and the characters and all that.
Yeah.
And then also in terms of, as I was talking about with like knowing what's a good starting point. Like with High Republic, it's very easy because it's its own kind of self-contained time period.
Right.
You don't have with like a lot of comics that are happening now, particularly that are set in the OT, of like you have overlapping storylines and things like that.
Right.
And so it's like you can't understand the one without the other. It's like High Republic. It's just the High Republic comics, and so you could do that very easily. And so yeah, I've read a bunch of them. I've gotten through almost all of the Phase 1 comics. The main line, the High Republic Adventure, Eye of the Storm. The only one that I'm missing is the Monster at Temple Peak one that I need to somehow track down digitally.
Yeah.
So I did that and really enjoyed reading the comics. Like, it was a lot of fun. Like, as you were alluding to earlier on in the episodes, like, it's intimidating in a lot of cases from the standpoint of, like, there's a whole bunch of it, and it's like, you look at like a Dr. Aphron's like 34, like issue 34, and you're like, oh my God, but like in reality, you can just knock out all of these fairly quickly if you just sit down to read them. Oh yeah, also I've done the High Republic manga, the Edge of Balance manga.
Yeah.
And so like that's an example. Like I did all 3 Edge of Balance in one afternoon. I just sat down, just read them.
One right after the other.
And so that was really great because, like, particularly for Phase 1, I feel like, I'll have a different perspective. I haven't yet done the Phase 2 comics, as those are a little bit harder. They haven't started doing the bound volumes, like the kind of the collections. I never know what those are called. The ones that, like, aren't omnibuses.
Trade.
The trade, something like that.
Trade paperbacks?
Yeah,
I believe.
And so I haven't yet quite started on Phase 2 yet. But in terms of the Phase 1, there's a lot of layers that get added on to the Phase 1 story that you're familiar with just from the books. And particularly by the time you get to Fallen the Star, it's premising a lot on you knowing what happened in the comics, particularly with the Avar Chris of it all.
Right.
And so it really helps in that way. And then also, I think one of the things that was great for me was seeing, because I mentioned like having gotten off of reading the Phase 2 books, is there is so much Phase 2 in the Phase 1 comics. And I already know this from, like, for example, I know, having heard from Brandon, my Clashing Sabers co-host, who's gone back and been reading some of the Phase 1 books. Like, he was talking about, like, going back to Light of the Jedi and being like, there's all this Phase 2 stuff that they're alluding to in there that you can now see. Yeah. And I reading the Phase 1 comics, it's like there's all like Phase 2s everywhere in the comics.
Yeah.
And of course, like, you couldn't know that at the time.
Right.
And so I'm just like really eager for the iterative experience of once we get Phase 3 and then looking back at, Phase 2 or even going back to Phase 1 and being like, oh my God, here's all the Phase 3 stuff that's happening in the Phase 1 storyline that we weren't aware of.
Right.
So, like, that's been a lot of fun, like getting to see those connections there.
Right. I think High Republic is going to be quite unique and magical in that way, where it may have this effect where it's great to read through it the first time, but then there's a word for this that's not coming to me right now, but there will be great value in going back to it and revisiting it again, knowing what you know now.
That's a big part of Star Wars, which is Star Wars has always had that kind of iterative quality.
Yeah.
Where new media adds on things that come before. So, like, you watch A New Hope now and it's like, you fought in the Clone Wars, hits different now.
Right.
Leia's hologram hits different now and all that stuff, but not quite in the same way.
Right.
Because in the sense of like, when George is making A New Hope, like he didn't have Ahsoka in mind, like the Clone Wars TV show was not in his mind. Versus with High Republic, there's a much greater level of intentionality in that, where they are deliberately seeding things. Yeah. And I mean, like the High Republic authors have talked about that. Yeah. Like I think, I know off the top of my head, like Charles Soule and Kevin Scott have both talked about like, oh, like you will, like when it is all done, you will be able to go back to the beginning and you will see all of this stuff.
Yeah. That's it. That'll be a really interesting episode to do.
Yeah.
It's like all the things you missed in, earlier phases or whatever it may be. Yeah, I was really kind of impressed at like how you kind of just like dove in and you're like, I want to read more comics, and like you did it. And that's without like, you didn't even like start with like, oh, you start with some more Vader stuff or things that may be quote unquote like easier in some ways because it's your favorite character or whatever. But High Republic was a good place to start, and let's just get into the fact that I have not read any comics this year that I can remember. That will change though, I think, because the Dark Droids series, the whole event thing, just started this past week as we're recording, and I really want to like get in on it because it's one of those where it's a huge crossover event with all the Marvel Star Wars ongoing comics. So it's like you have the Dark Droids like mainline miniseries or issues, and then it's like it goes into Darth Vader and Dr. Aphra and the Star Wars mainline comic. And I really like, I didn't keep up with the War of the Bounty Hunters one. I started and I kind of fell off of it, so I really want to try, if I can, to kind of keep up with it and see how it goes. But as it stands, as we're recording, really wanted to do more comics this year and just haven't been able to get into it. Time has been weird. Life has been a lot, but I really hope that I can. And I don't have a lot more to say as an update on that particular resolution. But yeah, like you just really like dove in, and I hope that you can keep doing that. I hope that you can. I'm still working on that getting started with comics episode because I want it, you want it. I'm sure a lot of people listening probably want it and are interested. So I'll have that for you at some point. I can't make any promises of when, but yeah.
My real hope is that once Phase 3 launches, that I can be able to keep up with the Phase 3 comics as they're coming out. I don't know if that's going to happen because I still will have to play catch up with the Phase 2.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm going to be able to really do that. But again, going back to the more protracted release calendar, that may allow it to be possible.
Right. We have the Phase 2, one of the Phase 2 comics, right?
I think so. One of them is on Hoopla, on the platform that we get. I think they have the first issue, volume thing, whatever. Okay. They haven't released a lot of the. Most of them are still just only available as individual issue comics.
Right. Yeah. Because you could try, because Phase 3 comics, I believe, don't begin until like December.
Yeah.
So you have some time if you wanted to really push yourself to try to get through Phase 2 stuff so that you could potentially start Phase 3 comics and keep up with them. Maybe. I guess we'll see. And I guess we'll keep you updated on that at the end of the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you technically talked about one of your...
Yeah,
so is it back to me then?
Yeah.
All right. So resolution number 3 is more Legends, deepening, again, my repertoire in Legends. I have done a little bit of that, like not a ton of it. Hopefully we'll get to do a little bit more, over the course of, the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. At the moment, time we're recording this, I'm doing a little bit of non-Star Wars reading. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of taking advantage of the lull that we have had in publishing and the kind of, the summer break that you get to kind of explore some non-Star stuff. Because, you got to have some variety in your reading. You got to consume different types of things. But yeah, for the remaining months, can weave it in between the new releases. So I've only really been able to do one Legends book up to this point in this year, and that was listening to one of the relatively newer entrants. I don't know if it was in the most recent way, but relatively newer entrants, which is Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void. So my approach to Star Wars media, the perspective that I always try to take and to adapt, you know, when I'm, you know, just again as a kind of Star Wars consumer of anything, the movies, TV shows, books, comics, whatever it may be, is I really try to go with the attitude of like, you know, judging things based on like things like that work for you versus like things that don't work for you, versus saying like this thing was bad, you know, like really just trying to go with the attitude of like sometimes with Star Wars media, like I use the comparison of like the Star Wars buffet. It's like you walk into a buffet, like there will be food there that you will like, that you are in the mood for, that suits your palate, your diet that you're on or whatever. And there will be things that are not. And like, just because something doesn't suit you, like, doesn't mean that it's not good, you know, from a kind of quality standpoint. Like, I always try to kind of approach things with that attitude, because there's definitely Star Wars media that is like that for me. Like, I will give, like, you know, the example from something like from more recent canon. It's like Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Like undeniably, those books are well written, really good, really compelling, but like, I'm not a starfighter person.
Yeah, right.
So like, I read those books and I'm like, I'm not jiving with this. Yeah. But I get like why people who are in that fandom celebrate those books as they're really good. Right. And they should. Yeah. So like, I always try to approach that attitude of like separating Star Wars like that, as opposed to saying, to approach things with the attitude of like, this is not for me, this doesn't work, as opposed to saying like, this is bad. Yeah. Dawn of the Jedi Into the Void really tested my faith. It really, there were many points where A, I wanted to stop reading, and also B, you wanted to just be like, this is bad. That like, this is not a situation where, oh, this doesn't resonate with me, like this is just not good. It was a slog to get through, and it was not even that long of a book.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get there. I mean, that's the thing about Star Wars books, is it's a spectrum. Some of them are really, really good. Some of them are more forgettable, and that's just, you know, that's how just books are in general. There are a lot of books. The same way there are a lot of Star Wars books, there are a lot of books in general. Not all of them can be great. So
yeah, I mean, the reason I picked this book and went into it was because I was drawn in with the premise of like that this book was and still is, in terms of Star Wars telling both canon and legends, I think the earliest chronological Star Wars story we've got. And so I was intrigued by like, okay, you get this like Jedi that's like it's pre-Old Republic, it's, you know, tens of thousands of years in the past, and so you get like a totally different point of view and perspective on like what the galaxy's like, what the Jedi were like. So that was sort of my in of like wanting to figure that out, and like it just didn't land with me. Like I was reading, like none of this is like catching me or resonating with me at all. I think it was almost like one of like, it just feels too different,
right?
And like it borderline does not feel like Star Wars.
Yeah, it very easily could have not been a Star Wars book. And
yes.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, but you tried.
Yeah,
you tried, and that matters, you know. And there's some more Essential Legends books coming out this month that I forgot about. That, you know, I'm excited about, but I forgot I got to pre-order them. Hey, so yeah, you'll have more opportunities to maybe read some more. There's a lot to choose from, you know, and I think you'll get there. I think there is still a little bit of time. We're running out of time because more Star Wars books are about to come out at the end of this month, beginning of September, October. Our lull is almost over. So, but you can do it, especially if they're audiobooks.
Yes,
I believe in you. You know, I also wanted to explore more Legends this year, and I'm doing that both with Fate of the Jedi and the Essential Legends collections, and buying some more Legends books too, thanks to some local independent bookstores who I now really, really love. So yeah, I'm acquiring more Legends books. I'm going to read them at some point. I'm excited, but again, like I kind of mentioned when I was talking about Fate of the Jedi, I'm going to keep saying the name of it so I don't get it wrong again. Legends is very interesting to me. It just because it's still Star Wars, but it's almost, you can treat it like as a different timeline. And so like almost in that vein of like Ronin, where it's like it's not canon, but it's still really, really good. So it's just a Star Wars story and it doesn't matter if it's canon or not. I kind of like it. I think I like Legends a little bit more than I would have if it was just Legends, which would just be the expanded universe, I guess. Because of that, because like you have the canon novels, which I've read all of them at this point because I'm caught up. I kind of have to be at this point. So it'd be really funny if that wasn't the case. If like there's like one canon book that I've completely forgotten about that I just don't have and have never read. I don't think that's true. I think someone would have told me by now. But I want to keep doing Legends. I would really like to get into some of the Legends comics, but that's probably not going to happen. There's a lot of time, but only so much at the same time. That was another one of mine, so you can go ahead with your
Okay, my last one, my resolution number 4 was to revisit the Aftermath trilogy written by one Chuck Wendig, and I have done that. On this second time, on my revisit, unlike the first time, I listened to the Aftermath trilogy instead of reading the physical copy, which is what I did the first time. And that is all that I will tell you about that.
Yeah.
Because we have something planned regarding the Aftermath trilogy, and I'm going to save all of my thoughts for that conversation.
You just don't want to tell me how much you still don't like them.
I'm not going to tell you anything about my feelings, one way or the positive or negative, neutral, what have you.
Yeah, and that's going to be, it's a new kind of episode format that I'm working on. And it's not going to be us talking about a book that's not good or that we didn't like. The whole point of it is, as I'll talk about more with my final resolution, is taking a book that you had maybe we'll say mixed feelings about the first time you read it, and now coming back to it, reflecting on what your thoughts were then, where you were in your life then, maybe what was going on that may have influenced your thoughts on that book or multiple books, I guess, and then reading it again and coming back and talking about it, talking about what did you think now? What are some things maybe you would have noticed or gotten out of it before that you maybe didn't the first time? Maybe did you consume the book in a different format? Did you now listen to it as opposed to reading it? Did that change what you thought about it? So that's kind of what we're working on, and that's the reason why, for some reason, I have decided and forgot that I decided, but then remembered when I was preparing for this episode, is that I wanted to reread Heir to the Jedi, which is a canon book that I will just say did not have nice things to say about the first time I read it. But I'm going to be my own guinea pig for this, and I'm going to reread it way after the first time that I did, and see if my perspective changes. See like what I think about it now, and maybe talk myself into giving it higher rating than I may have before. I have not gotten to it yet. I did loan it out from my library, for which I still have a valid card. And so I'm going to listen to it this time. We're going to see. And then I'll record maybe like I'll say a pilot episode for that format, and we'll see how it goes. Again, the point is not to completely change your mind, because as I like to say, it's okay to not like every Star Wars book. That's fair. Star Wars books are for everyone. That does not mean every book needs to be for every person, or that you're going to like every book that you read. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it is fair when consuming art to be critical, for personal reasons. There should be lines and limits, things like that. But it's fair to, talk about what maybe didn't work for you in a story. So I'm going to revisit that book. We're going to revisit Aftermath, and we'll see how those go. And if you end up liking those episodes, if they end up working out, if it ends up being not, an hour straight of us talking about how much we still don't like books, we'll keep doing it. So we'll see. So that's where we're at with that for now. We're doing great.
Yeah.
We're doing really great. It would have been so easy this year, especially considering how this year has gone for both of us personally. Everything's fine. It would have been really easy to just keep up with the new releases and just not venture beyond that. But we're kind of going, beyond that and really challenging ourselves to like you sat down that one day and just blew through so many comics, but you loved every single minute of it.
That
was fun
did.
to watch because I was right next to you reading my own stuff. It's really fun to watch someone get into reading something that they really, really enjoy. Yeah. So we're a little bit over halfway through the year, but there's still plenty of year to go. And there's so much more Star Wars books happening. We've had I'll say it's kind of we've had a little bit of a break. We didn't get anything in June. We got Inquisitor or Rise of the Red Blade in July, but most of August, other than the Essential Legends Collection books, we're not getting much until the very end. I was getting there.
Sorry.
It's okay. Until the very end. Next book that is coming out is, from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi, and I cannot wait to talk about that book, and it's going to be a really fun experience. I haven't started reading it yet, but that's coming very soon, and so we'll have that. We'll have Tales of Light and Life. That's the name of the book, right?
Yes.
It took me forever to finally get the exact name of that book right. So that's the short story anthology that takes place throughout the different phases of the High Republic. I'm really excited about that. Comes out beginning of September. And then October, the High Republic returns. And we'll get some of that in October and November. So there's a lot of Star Wars books still happening, and it's going to be really, really exciting. And I'm really excited to have a producer who's going to be here with me through all of it and making sure that that I'm okay.
Yeah.
And that I continue to do the show because I like to do it, that's important. So I'm sure you'll be back. Well, you'll definitely be back for the Aftermath.
Yes, we're coming back for the Aftermath.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to it.
Me too, I am. That's gonna be a good conversation. For the record, I'm putting this down now. You will not get me back for a Dawn of the Jedi episode. I'm not revisiting that book.
That's okay. That's
I was
fair.
one and done. I'm not going back.
That's fair. Everyone has those books where you read it and you're like, "Yep, that was a book."
Yeah.
So yeah. Again, this is technically another bonus episode. I've had a lot more bonus episodes come out between seasons than I honestly planned, but I really wanted to do this. I really felt in the mood to talk about Star Wars books, and luckily I have a fellow Star Wars book fan, not only on my podcasting team, but very close to me because we live in the same house. So it works out. When I want to record, I just say, hey, you want to record with me? This is our second podcast recording, not only this morning, but in a row.
Yeah.
We're having a great time, and I hope you are too. So yeah, I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know when the next episodes are coming out, how often, what they'll be. We're figuring that out. Hopefully there will be some very exciting guests on episodes that will be airing very soon. So look forward to that. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss those, because I'm telling you, I didn't ever think that I would be as lucky as I am to have the guests on that I may be having. So it's a very exciting time in the journey of Now This Is Lit, which I'm happy to say is continuing with more bonus episodes and then a season 2. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to, as you said, getting to work on season 2, because I think, we got a bunch of good ideas that we're working on that are in different stages of development for episodes. And, there's a lot of good book stuff that is coming out for the rest of the year. And I mean, even probably at some point, either at the end of this year or the very beginning of next year, we might do some kind of, not necessarily but I mean, like on the show, do some sort of retrospective. Like this year has just been a really great Star Wars book year.
It has.
So, yeah, and I have no doubt that that's going to continue. So there's a lot to look forward to, both in terms of, the episodes that, we'll be putting out for, for all the new material, but then also, looking back at things that already have come out in the past. So yeah, season 2 is going to be lit.
It sure is. Yeah, we have some great ideas for the show coming to you. Some maybe less great ideas about how often the show is going to come to you. I guess we'll talk about that some more.
Yes.
Every other week just doesn't feel like enough. The people need the Star Wars book content. You're shaking your head. You just
But that's an off mic conversation.
I guess. Fine. Whatever. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and you'll be hearing from me again very soon for reasons that I can't talk about yet because things are happening. Later.